Hello, I'm Peter Murray, and today I'm joined by Anne Bentley. Anne is a global board director at Rider Levett Bucknall. She's also a visiting professor at Birmingham University and is a member of the government's Construction Leadership Council. And perhaps I can just start off asking you about the Construction Leadership Council. Obviously, there you've been in a position to see how the government machine has been responding to the crisis as far as the construction industry is concerned. So can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Okay, yes, thank you. I mean, it's probably fair to say that construction wasn't the number one priority for the government in the very first days of the coronavirus crisis. Clearly, health services, keeping food production, etc., were higher priorities. And therefore, I think to some extent, the CLC stepped in to fill a little bit of a void because the CLC has always been the bridge between industry and government. And so we started to really look at what the absolutely key essentials for the construction industry were. Now, clearly, I mean, the top essential is health. I don't think anybody would for a second suggest that it wasn't. But there were huge amounts of concern within the industry and actually quite a lot of confusion within the industry as to whether construction should continue, and if it should continue, how it would continue. And so the very first step that the CLC took was producing the clearest possible guidelines in terms of what was permissible in terms of site works and how those site works had to be carried out using the site operating procedures. So that, I guess, health and welfare was the first priority, but then the second priority, certainly for the CLC, and this is pretty close to the first one actually, was to ensure that the construction industry didn't simply grind to a halt. I think all of us who work in construction recognise that it's not just about building stuff, it's that construction itself is a massive part of the economy. And if construction were to stop completely, then to restart construction is quite a difficult process. The losses that would be sustained by many companies and individuals would actually probably result in many businesses simply ceasing trading. And so, so long as we could do it safely, there was a really big piece of work in terms of how can we keep construction going and what role will construction play during the crisis. And then I guess the third part, and these aren't necessarily in order, was where sites can't continue or where consultants can't continue or whatever your business is, then making sure that the government assistance that has clearly been very generous can actually be accessed by all businesses, from the very small one-person SMEs right through to the multinational, multi-billion turnover companies. And again, there's been a lot of work done in terms of making sure that the loans and the government support and the grants are actually accessible and applicable. So I guess those three areas. What we're now turning to, though, and for me this is probably the most important area, certainly in the long term, is, what is the economy going to look like as we come out of it, and what part will construction play in rebuilding the economy as quickly as we possibly can?
So we're conversations at the moment are about how we're going to emerge from the lockdown. But as a global leader of the company, clearly you have quite a lot of conversations with offices around the world, particularly in the Far East. What have you learned from some of them as to about their experiences?
It's been really interesting. I mean, it's fair to say that China are at the head of the curve, if you like. In fact, our Wuhan office reopened last week, and that was the last one of our Chinese offices to reopen. They had been closed for 10 weeks, though. And I mean, I think that gives you a perspective of just how badly affected China was by this. And the Chinese government have taken, again, quite an interventionist approach in terms of getting the economy running. And so we're finding that construction projects have got back on site really quickly in China. In fact, one of the main issues that is preventing 100% productivity in China now is that they have a large migrant workforce, Chinese migrants, moving from one part of China to another. And a lot of these workers have been stuck in the wrong region, if you like, and they've actually implemented regional quarantining. So if you pass from one province to another, you still have to do a 14 days quarantine. Clearly, that wouldn't happen in the UK, but it could happen between UK and Europe. So there certainly could be some lessons to learn there in terms of the construction sites. There's definitely lessons to learn in terms of the fact that the Chinese government machine has very much turned its attention inward rather than necessarily outward at the moment. And so is undoubtedly pump priming a number of projects and making sure that people are back to work. The threat that not so much the construction industry in China faces, but the manufacturing industry is concerned about in China, is the fact that although they've started work again, of course, most of their export markets are now closed because nobody's building anything anywhere else. And so they're definitely not at 100% capacity yet, or productivity yet. But I think that the light at the end of the tunnel is it has ended. It's not completely unrestricted. I mean, there's still social distancing, people still need permits to move around, etc. But, there is light there, and with fairly decisive action, then, the economy doesn't have to be as damaged as perhaps it could be if that action isn't taken. In other parts of the world, we are seeing different actions by both individuals and governments. So the Singapore government has taken a similar stance to the UK in terms of business support packages. I think in North America it's being dealt with more as a state-by-state basis, and so actually it seems slightly less directly controlled in North America. And then our Australian business is probably 2 or 3 weeks behind Europe at the moment. So they're actually still not in lockdown. They've got social distancing, but the business is carrying on pretty normally at the moment. So you can see this sort of global flow around the world.
Yes, but I suppose that is one positive aspect of being a global company, isn't it? When one is up, maybe another one is down, and vice versa.
Yeah.
So what are the key tasks you see as a company at Rider Levett Bucknall about what you have to do emerging from the crisis?
So I think the main task I would call is, you might think this is a strange one, but it's what I call maintaining goodwill. And what I mean is the goodwill of our staff, because, our staff are going through a pretty terrible time, as everybody in the country is. We have some staff that we've had to put on furlough. We've implemented some pay reductions across the board, actually. And so, everyone is very conscious that their health might be at risk, that their finances might be at risk. So the first thing is really maintaining the goodwill of the staff, because when we come out of this, and certainly our experience in China has showed us this, we could actually be quite busy. And so the last thing you want is a sort of disenfranchised workforce. But it's not just the goodwill of the staff, it's also the goodwill of the customers. I think we could be delivering some quite tough advice to customers when we come out of this, in terms of some of the contractual issues that they're going to face, some of the sort of requests that will be coming from contractors and consultants in terms of, payments, in terms of where risk lies, for example. And so I think that it's really important that everyone maintains a sense of proportion coming out of this, and remembers that we've gone through a really bad time, and that everything might not be, if I'm honest, 100% contractually I's dotted and T's crossed. I think we've got to come up with equitable and practical solutions rather than end up with years of in-court fighting. So certainly from a sort of service point of view, that's important. I think that it's really, really important as well, coming out of this, that all businesses sort of maintain best practice. I think that there could be a real temptation for some businesses to jump on, if you like, the race to the bottom, to cut corners, to start offering deals. And this could be consultants or contractors. And actually, we've all got to stand together in this and go, no, we should actually come out of this crisis better, not worse, than we went into it. So I think there's quite a lot of soft issues. There's also quite a lot of really, really hard business issues, like, have we collected the cash? What does our forward order book look like? Are our clients solvent? Are we going to get paid, etc.? So a real combination of things we've got to concentrate on.
But there's often a lot of complaints about the time it takes to procure projects, but also get through planning. If we try and speed that up, can we also maintain quality, do you think? Or is there a danger as we try and do things faster as we come out of it that we might lose quality at the same time?
Well, it's quite interesting because actually, there are some planning, some ways of expediting the planning process anyway that local authorities can use in emergencies. That those regulations are already there. And so actually, if local authorities have particularly important sites or schemes that they see as being sort of critical to take them forward, then they can use the expedited procedures. They're often slightly loath to use them because they don't want challenge. But again, I think that when you come out of a crisis, you've got to be a little braver sometimes. I don't think speed necessarily means bad quality. You still have professional planners, you still have the committees who will be making the same decisions. I just think that maybe, and again, this might be a bit controversial, but maybe we need to shorten some of the consultation times because it's, particularly on smaller developments, often a lot doesn't come out of the public consultation. It just adds a period of time to the process. I think one of the things we will have to do, though, is look at the actual resources of planning departments, because most of the bottlenecks in the system now are not really because of consultation, if I'm honest, they're because of workload. And certainly if those processes can be speeded up, then that would be a good thing. So I'm absolutely sure that there is a lot that can be done to get rid of some of the bureaucracy of it, but not actually put the quality to one side at all. And again, it's, as all of us have seen, that suddenly we've all become experts at Zoom and Teams and Skype and everything else. And when needs must, we can become expert at some of these digital systems quite quickly. So hopefully planning will go much more down that route in the future.
Yes, but I think it's one of those technologies that has been advanced very quickly by the lockdown at the moment. And certainly there are a number of planning departments who are already using digital means for public consultation.
Yes, that's right. And I mean, I think that's actually would be a really positive outcome if that becomes the sort of norm rather than the sort of, at the moment, it's slightly exceptional. So I think that there is the will, and I think there is the means to actually make planning quicker, but make it equally robust. I'm not advocating that quality goes out of the window. So, again, I'm saying to all my colleagues all the time, we are in a pretty dire situation at the moment. None of us has experience of this before, but it will end. And let's take the positives that come out of it. The sort of digital sort of skills that we've all developed. I think there are positives around the environment in terms of, we've seen a massive drop in pollution. We've seen a massive drop in carbon, and we've proved to ourselves that we can change it. Perhaps, again, it was not the way we thought we would change it, but nonetheless we have. I think that even looking at construction sites, the sites that have had the highest amount of off-site manufacture have been the ones that have been able to continue operating because they've had fewer people on site. And actually, a lot of people are saying to me, well, they're using some of this downtime to do some training and development and to enhance their skills. So although it is a dire time, I do think that there are lots of things that we can at least use the situation we're in to a future benefit, if you like.
Well, let's hope so. Let's hope we keep some of those positives and don't just go back to bad old ways once this is finished. So, and thank you very much indeed for your contribution, and enjoy the rest of the nice sunny afternoon.
A pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.